In this video, we're going to be talking about one of the greatest wealth creation tools in the world. Hey YouTube, my name's Jeff, I'm from Finance Fit, and today we're going to be talking about compound interest. Compound interest was once described by Albert Einstein as being the eighth wonder of the world. Albert Einstein believed that compound interest was one of man's greatest achievements. So what is compound interest? I'm going to make it really simple, okay? So compound interest is the interest you make off the interest you've made. Okay, so if I have a principal amount of $100 and I have an interest rate, or I'm receiving interest of 10% on that $100 every single year. So after year one, my $100 is now $110. On the second year, if I'm still receiving 10%, I'm now receiving 10% of $110, which makes $11. So on year two, my $110 is now $121, and so on and so forth, until that amount starts to multiply exponentially. So can compound interest make you rich? The short answer is yes. Compound interest is arguably one of the most powerful wealth creation tools ever conceived by man. In the ancient city of Babylon, going back over 4,000 years ago, they found clay tablets to instruct the students on the mathematics of compound interest. And while we're on the subject of Babylon, one of my favorite books is actually The Richest Man in Babylon. It's one of the first financial books that I've read, and to be honest, it's one of the oldest. It's the book that all modern day finance books refer to, not in a literal sense, but in their teachings. You know, I think that the very first concepts of modern day finance came from this book. I think it's really worth the read, and I'll put a link in the description below for you. In modern times, Warren Buffett became one of the richest men in the world by diligently and patiently compounding his investment returns over a very, very long period of time. Warren Buffett is the most successful investor in the world by far, and here's what he has to say on the subject of compound interest.
Einstein is reputed to have said that compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world or something like that. And it goes back to that story you probably learned when you were in grade school, where somebody did something for the king and the king said, "What can I do for you?" And he said, "Well, let's take a chessboard and put one kernel of wheat on the first square and then double it on the second and double it on the third." And the king readily agreed to it. And by the time he figured out what 2 to the 64th amounted to, he was giving away the entire kingdom. So it's a pretty simple concept, but over time, it accomplishes extraordinary things.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the cons of compound interest. It can also work against you in the same kind of way. If you have a loan, for example, with a high interest rate, the interest that is being charged against you can be compounded over a very long period of time and cause you to pay so much more interest than what you expected due to the power of compounding. So I'll use a credit card as an example. Let's say you have a credit card loan of about $20,000. These credit card limits normally have 20% interest on them. A 20% interest limit on a $20,000 credit card would amount to about $4,388 every single year just in interest payments. So 20% of $20,000 is normally about $4,000. That means that your creditors are scamming at least $388 from you every single year just using the power of compounding. Alright, so what I'd like to do now is head over to the computer and give you a few demonstrations of the power of compound interest, and just how wealthy it can make you over a long period of time. So let's head over and check it out. So we're at the computer. All I've done is gone to Google, typed in compound interest calculator, and then gone down to the Money Smart website, which is a government website. I'll have a compound interest calculator for you to do a couple little calculations yourself, of some different kind of figures and what you think you might be able to expect in the long period, in the long run. I will still show you my computer. You'll be able to see what I'm doing. So follow along and hopefully learn something from it. So on the web page, the Money Smart government web page, where you have your compound interest calculator, and I'm going to do an initial deposit. Okay, so let's say we start off with, let's just say $1,000. Okay, nice easy figure, $1,000. Now we're going to go to regular deposits. Okay, so how much do you want to add to this account? We'll say it yearly. Okay, so deposit frequency annually, every year. $5,000 is a good figure. Okay, so around about $100 in savings every week. So we've got $5,000 there. Deposit frequency is annually. Compounding is annually as well. Number of years, we'll say 20 years. Brilliant. And they have a default annual interest rate of about 5%. You can change that to whatever you want. Generally, if you're following an ETF that is following an index, let's say the S&P 500 or the ASX 200 or something like that, generally you'll get around about between 7 and 10% every single year. So we'll say 10%, okay? Somewhere in between there. And you can see here that on the first year, we've got our initial deposit plus our $5,000, brings us to about $6,000 and $6,080. Okay, so in that first year, we've only accumulated $80 in interest. When you start moving up to, let's say, the 6th year, okay, so initial deposit $1,000, and we've now had $30,000 in regular deposits. The interest that we've gained in total from start to now is about $7,267. Okay, and that's after about 6 years. Let's start moving to, we'll get up the ladder a bit, and we'll go to the 14th year, okay? So in the 14th year, we've had our initial deposit of $1,000 14 years ago, and we've now contributed about $70,000 in extra funds towards this investment, okay? So every single year we've put $5,000 in, and over those 14 years, we've now accumulated $53,000 worth of interest, okay? $53,000 worth of money, free money, okay? It's just interest on top of interest on top of interest. And we now have a total of $124,000. And all we've put in is $71,000 of our own money. We've nearly doubled it. Now let's go all the way to year 20, okay? This is where we're going to take our money back out and reap what we've sown. Okay, so you got your initial deposit, $1,000. We've now made $100,000 in regular deposits over 20 years. Okay, so $100,000 in savings over 20 years. And over that 20-year period, we've made $132,471 in interest. Okay, that brings our total to $233,000. We have more than doubled the amount of money that is in this investment, or the value of this investment has now doubled just by the power of compounding interest. I'll look at another scenario. Okay, if you have the money, right, to put aside $10,000 in the beginning, and you can afford to save, let's say, $10,000 every year, and we'll compound it annually. We'll say over 20 years. We'll leave the interest rate about 8%. That's about right, roughly. Now, over 20 years, okay, so we've got our initial deposit of $10,000, and over 20 years, we've added $200,000 to this investment, okay? So we now have $210,000 of our own money, but over 20 years, we've accumulated nearly $300,000 in interest. That is insane. Which gives us a total of 20 years of $504,229. And if that's not wealth, I don't know what is. So, where your nan and your pop, or your mum and your dad, even where they're saving their money in the bank, and they're saving up $10,000 a year if they can. After 20 years, they might only have $210,000 in that bank account. Whereas if you go along and you invest, right? Invest into whatever your investment vehicle is, and it's paying you 8% every single year just for that investment, you will end up after 20 years with $504,000, $229 if you reinvest those distributions that you receive from your investment vehicle. Okay, so this doesn't work if you take out your interest. So in the first year they've given you $800 in interest. It doesn't work if you take that $800 and go and spend it on clothes or a new PlayStation or something like that. You've got to reinvest it. It's got to go back into the investment, and it's got to compound over time. And this is how the wealthy do it. This is how the rich people think, and that's where the saying comes from: the rich get richer. It's because they have millions of dollars in these accounts, and their millions are making millions again. Millions on millions. The rich get richer. So take your investments, take your dividends, take your earnings, take whatever you're getting out of this investment vehicle, and put it back into the investment vehicle. All right, ladies and gents, that brings us to the end of our compound interest video. If you've liked what you've seen today, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. That allows us to bring you guys more content into the future. Also, leave us a comment if you can. If you don't comment, I don't know what you guys want to see, so leave us a comment, let me know what you want to see, and I'll try and accommodate you guys in the best way I can. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.